What's up, Who Dat Nation, and welcome into another episode of Saints Daily, your home for everything to do with the black and gold. My name is Tim, and let's jump right into the Shaheed trade. Now that the draft is completed, to this point, unless there is any movement on these players later on for draft picks, the Shaheed trade is final. And I want to quickly review what both teams got out of it. Obviously, 1 year into it, the Seahawks re-signed Shaheed. They get a Super Bowl win where he definitely contributed in the run, especially in the special teams. So if you're going to try to give a winner 1 year into it, you have to say the Seahawks win just because they got the ring. And at the end of the day, that's what every team is after. But the Saints obviously drafted two players with the picks that they got from the Seattle Seahawks acquiring Rashid Shaheed. The Saints got a fourth and a fifth round pick, and those picks that were used in this draft were to draft offensive lineman Jeremiah Wright and defensive back Lorenzo Styles Jr. Both players with very, very high ceilings, low floors, if you ask me. Both players could be phenomenal players in this league. They have a ton of natural talent. They have a ton of room to grow. And if you trust this coaching staff to get those players to the next step and the next level in their careers, you could really have hit on both of these players. Worst case scenario, you have a great special teamer in Lorenzo Styles Jr., and Jeremiah Wright just never makes that full transition over to offensive guard that he started in college. We'll get to him in a little bit. In terms of the Seattle Seahawks, they re signed Shaheed to a 3 year, $51 million contract, which, quick math, about $17 million per year with that contract. So very reasonable contract to bring in Shaheed for 3 more years, especially with how the wide receiver market has kind of boomed over the last, I want to say, 5 years, ever since the Jaguars signed that wide receiver that kind of broke the market. Um, and now you see GSN resetting it, and Puka's going to reset it. What's Olave's contract going to look like, right? We've talked about that ad nauseum at this point, but 17 million per year for Shaheed is a really good deal in my opinion. He was healthy last year. That was his main concern. So as long as that continues on, I'm always going to be a Shaheed fan. I always appreciated what he did during his time here in New Orleans, and I'm excited to see his career continue on, and I always wish him the best. More on the pick that the Saints did get with that and Jeremiah Wright. Today, I want to quickly go over the fourth round picks in a little bit more detail. Not a full deep dive, but just some more background information on these players, as Saints fans might not know some stuff that did kind of occur in Jeremiah Wright, specifically his career leading up to the draft. Wright originally in 2020, whenever he first started his college football career, was a reserve defensive tackle. So he wasn't even a guard whenever he started his career in college. In 2020, he played 6 games as a reserve defensive tackle. And then in 2021, he redshirted while recovering from surgery. So he didn't even play in 2021 as a defensive tackle at all. In 2022, he played in 12 games with one start as a left guard. So he started that transition over from defensive tackle to left guard in 2022. After that, in 2023, 11 games as a reserve, so no stats. But 2024 and 2025, he started all 12 games at right guard for Auburn. Pretty good program, pretty good team. And obviously, when you transition from a position that you used to play into another position later on in your career, it is going to take some time to master the fundamentals, master the techniques, and to be able to be a player that would be worthwhile getting drafted. Think of all the players in college football, all the athletes, all the people who have, who are just faster and bigger and stronger than the average human who just never even get drafted, who never get their shot in the NFL. This is a guy who switched positions during college after an injury and still ended up being a fourth round draft pick just based off of the fact that he has that much talent. Every scouting report with Jeremiah Wright will say something very similar. He's very good in the run game. He needs to clean up in the pass game. He let up 5 sacks last year. He does need to get better. But the good thing about this spot in New Orleans, he doesn't need to be a day one starter. Cesar Ruiz at right guard, I know is in some cases a punching bag for this fan base. He doesn't play like a first round pick sometimes. I don't necessarily have much against Ruiz. I think he's kind of had it rough with the center and the right tackle kind of being a revolving door throughout his career, and not getting that continuity around him really does impact the ability to play stunts and to play the offensive line position. But due to the fact that Cesar Ruiz is a Saint, and we'll talk about a couple free agents that the Saints could also look into if they are looking to upgrade over Ruiz, you don't have to play right away if you're Jeremiah Wright. You can take some time, develop, and get better with this coaching staff and just continue to grow, knowing that you're not probably going to get any starts or any snaps really during this season. Just hone in, study what you need to study, and get better. And this guy's ceiling is through the roof. You do not transition from defensive tackle to guard and get drafted like it's nothing. You only do that if you have the talent and the natural ability, which clearly this player does have. The other player that the Saints drafted in the fourth round was Bryce Lance. At this point, everybody probably knows Bryce Lance is the brother of former third overall pick Trey Lance, the quarterback that the 49ers traded up for way back in the day before Brock Purdy kind of took the 49ers and made that mistake not as big of a mistake. Bryce Lance, he's an interesting prospect. On paper, he should be probably a first or a second round pick. Statistically and his measurables. When you play for North Dakota State, there's always that asterisk of the players that you play against, the competition that you're going up against. I was listening to a podcast where Steve Smith, the former Panthers receiver, was actually talking about Bryce Lance. And whenever that was brought up, I really liked what he said was, a route's still a route. A good route is still a good route. A bad route is still a bad route. If you watch the tape, you watch him get open, you watch him run good routes. It doesn't matter if you're running routes against somebody who can't cover as well as somebody who might be able to cover if you're playing, a Monsieur Delane or Jermon McCoy or whoever, is a top tier cornerback in college football. At the end of the day, a good route is still a good route, and and Bryce Lance runs good routes, right? So it's not just the speed that's getting him open, which just to go over the combine stats, just to get these out of the way, quote unquote, get these out of the way, right? He ran a 4.34 40, 1.49 10-yard split. Yeah, I mean, he's fast. His acceleration is elite. He's vertical jump of 41.5 inches, broad jump of 11 and 1 inches, three cone drill, 7 seconds, and 20-yard shuffle, 4.15 seconds. He did not participate in the bench press. Those numbers jump way off the charts. I don't know where they rank in terms of this year's draft class for wide receivers, but he was definitely towards the top. NFL Next Gen Stats always compiles the athleticism score based off of these numbers, and he scored a 98 out of 100, which was second out of all the wide receivers in this draft class. So, again, if you are kind of a bit of a nerd like I am whenever it comes to numbers, PFF and these next gen stat numbers, they do speak to me a little bit. I understand that they don't tell the full story ever, and you should never just look at the raw data and statistics as an end all be all, but that does say something. So again, a 4.34 40 at the combine. This guy is 6'3". 6'3", running a 4.34 40. This is a field stretcher. This is a guy who, assuming his hands are going to stay pretty consistent, which was not really an issue for him in college, He could be a jump ball guy, he could be a speed guy. Um, the reason why I want to talk about the fourth round is because we did talk about the first three rounds, as most people do for the most part, but I also think that both of these picks, I could see them both end up being um, long-term starters in the NFL. I could see them both being flashes in the pan, right? I mean, there's a lot of fast, big receivers who just don't pan out, and that's just the truth. I mean, Brandon Coleman, every single time he caught a pass, I thought this dude is gonna break out and he's gonna be the best wide receiver in the NFL, and it just doesn't happen sometimes. But there's just something about Bryce Lance that I'm very excited about, and assuming this coaching staff can get the most out of Jeremiah Wright, which I do think they can do. Um, I'm very excited about both of these prospects long term. I don't know if they're going to make a ton of impact during the 2026 season, but as I keep liking to say, the draft, free agency, this entire offseason, everything is not just about 2026. This is about 2027. And that's not just true for the Saints, that's true for every team, including the teams in the NFC South. So let's go over real quick what the other teams in the NFC South did during the draft. I'm just going to talk about the first three rounds for each team. Some stuff about the players, obviously, as you go through the draft process, you read a lot about the players that are being drafted. I'm not familiar with every single one. Again, I'm not a scout. I'm a big fan of football, both college and NFL. So I watch as much as I can. I love to look at the stats. I love to do all that, but I don't pretend to be an expert, right? So again, for the first three rounds, New Orleans Saints, Jordan Tyson, pick 8, Kristen Miller, pick 42, and Oscar Delp, pick 73. Um, Tampa Bay, pick 15, they ended up getting Ruben Bain Jr., the edge out of Miami. That pick was one that really surprised me that he fell all the way to 15. I know the short arms are a thing. I know that that's something that um, it definitely was exasperated in this Super Bowl with Will Campbell. Um, if you just watch the games, Ruben Bain's a good player. If you watch Miami at all last year, he just he jumped off the screen. Every run play, it just seemed like he was able to diagnose it quickly and just at least, if not make the tackle, at least at the edge, at least do something to interrupt that run in the backfield. His pass rush ability is pretty good. So I think Tampa Bay got a very good player. We'll see. Again, measurables matter. Whenever you're saying historically this has never happened with guys this with arms that short, it's something that you pay attention to. But at the end of the day, talent's talent. The guy's had short arms his entire life. He knew how to use them in college and look that good. I'm sure he's going to be fine in the NFL. Um, Tampa Bay also similar to the Saints, losing their longtime captain in the middle of the defense. So they drafted linebacker Josiah Trotter out of Missouri with pick 46, and then wide receiver Ted Hurst out of Georgia State with pick 84. Carolina drafted Monroe Freeling at pick 19, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. This was a pick that he was slowly climbing throughout the entire draft process. I was a little surprised he actually fell all the way down to 19 based off of everything I was reading and hearing about the player. Again, smokescreen season, so, it is what it is, but I was fully expecting him to be a top 15 pick. I really thought that he was going to just keep continuing to go up. He's probably one of the, when it comes to measurables and just, the build of the player, um, he's one of the players in this draft that's an offensive tackle through and through, and there's really no questions due to size or anything like that if he should be kicked into guard or anything. So I was a little surprised that he fell to 19. So I think the Panthers did very good with Freeling. He's a little bit of a developmental prospect though, so you don't have a guaranteed starter. He could be a really good starter. He could be an average starter. Or he could be kind of like a Pete, where he kind of floats around, back up, kind of um, doesn't live up to the potential. Um, he kicked into guard. You can maybe see Freeling kicking into guard. Like I said earlier, he's build wise an offensive tackle, but I'm hearing Miami's putting Proctor, the 800-foot, 2,000-pound offensive lineman, Sorry, I think he's like 6'7", 340 or something like that. He's just huge. He's a huge man. And I think they're putting him at guard. So if they can put him at guard, anybody can go to guard, really. And then second round pick, Lee Hunter, the defensive lineman out of Texas Tech. And then wide receiver Chris Brazzell, out of Tennessee, was their third round pick. So I like the Brazzell pick as well. I think the Panthers did pretty good. They took some swings, and assuming they hit, um, I think that they're going to be, in really good shape. I've said it before. I don't understand all the betting websites that have the Panthers last, to win the division. I think that they've only gotten better, and they won the division last year. I don't think the Falcons got any better. I think that they're relatively the same. Coming into this year, I don't know if Tua would be an upgrade over Penix. Very different quarterbacks, right? You have a guy with a huge arm but accuracy issues, and then a guy with an arm that can get him maybe 40, 50-yard throws, but really accurate whenever he does make those throws. So super different uh, quarterbacks. You just got to hope that the coach is good if you're a Falcons fan, but as a Saints fan, obviously, hopefully the coach is not good. Hopefully the coach is good enough to get them 8 wins and a middling draft pick, and continue to just not be able to get a lot of talent over there. Speaking of that, though, the Falcons did not have a first round pick. They did trade that pick away, and that pick ended up being a quarterback. So obviously, if you're a Rams fan, um, you're a little confused why you used pick 13 to draft a backup quarterback to, Matthew Stafford, to when you should be all in. But Ty Simpson is going to be a prospect that I'm watching throughout his career. I know a lot of Saints fans don't like the Rams with the 2018 incident, but it would be funny if Ty Simpson turns out to be a Hall of Fame player, because that was the Falcons pick. Anyway, without a first round pick, the Falcons did have two second round picks where they drafted Avion Terrell, brother of AJ Terrell. So they're both now Falcons, cornerback as well. So that was pick 43. Avion Terrell had like a 4.94 RAS score, so he was never going to be a Saint at all. Obviously not a fan of the Falcons, but it is always cool to see family playing with each other. I think that's always an exciting storyline. This one I was jealous about. Pick 45, Zion Young from Missouri. That was someone who I really wanted the Saints to get in this draft class. I'm happy with Kristen, but I I think Zion Young would have been a better immediate fit for this team, but I digress. And then Jacoby Lane, the wide receiver out of USC, was their third round pick. Um, Basically, if you kind of want to summarize the four teams, right? Saints went offense heavy early, and late, as we all know. Bucks, they lead into the defense. The Panthers were building out their trenches, and the Falcons were working on the outside, both on offense and defense. So all four teams, I think, did relatively well in the draft. Again, if you look at draft grades today, you'll laugh at them in a year, in 2 years, 3 years, right? And draft grades are good for engagement, but no one knows. You really don't. The draft is a crapshoot. You can want the Caleb Downs all you want, but you can't guarantee anything, right? So I'm excited about what the Saints did, but the rest of the NFC South seems like they did well, as well. And still to this day, I don't think the draft really moves my predictions at this point, which are still that the Panthers should win the division, followed by the Saints, followed by the Buccaneers, followed by the Falcons. All right, I did mention it a little bit ago. Lately, we've been doing some dives in on who might be some good fits for this team if they're willing to spend a little bit still in free agency to bring in a veteran, or a player to fit maybe a small need. We brought up Cesar Ruiz a little bit ago. On the offensive line right now, you have Kelvin Banks, who you have a lot of faith in. The way he ended last year, even against some teams that might not be as good, you have good pass rushers. He ended the season last year extremely well. Last year, Kelvin Banks played a lot of snaps on an island, meaning he didn't get a lot of help from the rest, he didn't get chips. He didn't get tight end chips. He didn't get running back chips. He was on an island a lot, and he struggled a little bit in some games early on, but he definitely picked it up, and I think you feel very solid with Kelvin Banks. Obviously, you bring in the left guard from Buffalo, high-priced free agent. You should be set with Edwards there at left guard. You also have Radens as a backup, so you are pretty comfortable with your backup situation at guard. Radens probably can switch between either guard position. McCoy at center is obviously a good pick. Losing Fortner was a little bit of a bummer. Obviously, McCoy just has an injury history, so you hope that he can stay healthy. But if he can't, there's a bit of a question mark there. And then you get to Ruiz, who again I think he plays better than most fans give him credit for. You have a lot of turnover at the center position and at the right tackle position. Last year, Fuaga, who you also feel very good about when he's healthy, but staying healthy has kind of been an issue for him. When Fuaga plays and is healthy, he is great and you feel great about him. So really the only starter you have questions about is Ruiz. I don't have a lot of questions on him, but a lot of other people do. If you look at PFF grades, which I reference a lot on this podcast, PFF doesn't like Ruiz. So I think there's definitely a potential to get a little bit better at that position. You probably don't move on from Ruiz this year. You do have an out on his contract next year. And if you designate him a June 1st cut this year, you could get out of it and have a lot of positive cap as well. So it's not out of the possibility. So Ruiz's contract for the next 2 years, he counts 14.2 million, just under 14.2 million against the cap for the next 2 years. But after this year, there are no guarantees left, so you kind of have an out. You can cut him. Um, right now, his void year in 2028 will cost the cap 4.8 million, so you don't really have a ton of future investment there, regardless. You could move on from the player this year if you really wanted to, but pretty much easily next year. If you would move on from him this year, or if you would want to maybe bring in a guard and have Ruiz be a good backup guard slash center. Center was his natural position in college, which got him drafted in the first round. And if McCoy is going to get hurt again, it might be a good idea to keep him around as a backup to maybe be the backup center. The two players that might make sense are older players, but they are still very productive, especially last year. You have 34-year-old Joel Bitonio. He typically plays left guard, so I don't know if he would be able to make a transition over to the right side. I don't know if Edwards would be able to make that transition to the right side if you would sign Bitonio to play left guard. Um, I don't know what the contract would look like for either of these players, so obviously you might have to get creative with the cap, which I don't want this team to continue doing. So that's kind of an asterisk. If you got to get super creative with the cap, you know what? You just got out of that. It's not worth the effort, right? But last year, Batonio played 1,081 snaps, so 34 years old, but he's still productive. He still plays. He was on a bad team, but he had a 70.7 overall grade from PFF. The Browns are not a good offense. They are not a good team. It was not his fault. His run blocking grade was a 64.4 and then a 75.7 pass blocking grade. To me personally, I think this offense invested a lot in the running back position, so I definitely want to see a great offensive line for the run game. But Shuck is the most important piece on this entire team right now. And if you can get him comfortable and get people who can block very well for him, that's priority number one. The second guy is Kevin Zeitler. 36 years old, so a little older than Batonio. Again, though, he played 900 snaps last year, so he's playing a lot of time. He's still on the field often. 74.5 overall grade from PFF, 70.8 run blocking grade, and a 75.4 pass blocking grade. So he's definitely a very, very good starter. Natural position is right guard, so you don't have to worry about any weirdness if you would sign him. Again, it's just my opinion on a couple people that I think would be good fits for this team. You get a solid offensive line where you're comfortable across the board. The way I want to look at this team is Kellen Moore coached the Philadelphia Eagles on at least their offense to a Super Bowl, right? He was the play caller. He was the offensive coordinator. Sirianni, gets a lot of flack. I guess he's a very successful coach. So he's been to two Super Bowls. Kellen Moore made that offense look unbelievable. And when he leaves, it's a pretty much the same offense. A couple changes, but pretty much the same offense. And last year, they did not look like that. I would love this team to continue to build this offense in that mold. Go heavy on the offensive line, build around the quarterback, use that running back as much as possible, run the ball, make Shuck's life easier, give him weapons, and just have this offense just be able to close out games by turning around and handing the ball off 20 times. That is something that this team's kind of lacked over some time. So if you have a question mark at any position in the offensive line, it could sink your entire offensive line. These two players, I think, immediately come in and raise the entire floor of this team. They actually might even add a win or two if you bring that in, if you really are that low on Ruiz. Um, Again, I think Ruiz has talked on the Teron Armstead podcast about getting back to the fundamentals, trying to do the simple things, stop trying to, go above and beyond and do things that he shouldn't be doing. Um, I have a lot of faith that he'll get better, but I think these two players could kind of make a question mark, a statement, and you kind of at this point maybe you're not expecting to win a Super Bowl, but you want to keep growing the young quarterback's career. Maybe that is an investment that's worthwhile. As always, though, please let me know in the comments what you think about anything we talked about. Between the two fourth rounders, which one of those two are you more excited for? Obviously, it's easier to get excited for the wide receiver than the guard, but we just spent a lot of time talking about one hole in the offensive line, sinking an entire team. So I'm very excited for both of them. But yeah, right now I'm leaning towards Jeremiah Wright being one of my more I'm excited about prospects. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, press that subscribe button and drop us a like and share it with your friends, and we'll catch you next time.